everyone, welcome back to another Diablo IV news roundup. As we near closer the release of the game, Blizzard has really been ramping up marketing. It's been a fair bit of new information over the past week or so. But then also, we just wrapped up and concluded the server slam, this being the final beta test prior to release, which gave us another opportunity to go hands-on with the game. Overall, reception to the event does seem fairly positive, if not a little subdued compared to the prior open beta. I will say, at least anecdotally, it seems like far fewer people were playing this time around, either due to there being less marketing or because this beta includes all of the exact same content as the last beta, and lots of people already played through it and don't want to play through it again prior to release. I will say I know personally far fewer people on my friends list played this weekend, and those people who did play played much less, but I think it makes sense. Mainly, I suspect most people wanted to just jump in to unlock the new cosmetic. Not much of a reason to grind out new legendaries and stuff when there's not much content to see and everything's about to get wiped, and we're just, again, a couple of weeks away from official release. So yeah, I guess it's not that surprising that almost certainly were a lot less people playing in the beta this time around than the prior weekend. But yeah, overall, I would say impressions were generally positive from us getting to play the Fractured Peaks again. They made some nice improvements overall, but I will say there were a few pain points that were brought up over the weekend by the community, things that we just kept seeing brought up online. Three main issues that I would want to address are the legendary drop rates, the nerf to the minions in the game, and then the difficulty of that world boss, Ashava. Starting with legendaries. So during the open beta back in March, the drop rate of legendaries was evidently buffed to somewhere around 300%. For this round of testing, they tuned it back, and it is much more in line with what we should expect drop rates to be come release. This was a rather significant change, and with it came some complaints. People were like, hey, I used to get a lot of legendaries. Where are all of the legendaries? Personally, after playing the past couple of days, I'll say I think it's pretty good for where it's at, given, you know, we really shouldn't expect to be getting tons of legendary items when we're leveling from 1 to 20 on the maximum of difficulty, world tier difficulty 2. As you level up and as you go up to the higher world tiers, drop rates of legendaries and above will be increasing significantly. In fact, if anything, I almost feel like it still feels like legendary drop rates are a bit too high. Like on my level 20 character, playing somewhere around 10 hours this weekend, I found like 12 total items in my time, and that's, I feel like, a lot for like a level 20 character, and that was without like specifically farming for them, just playing the game normally, doing things, going around the map, unlocking the dungeons. I was just playing pretty standard. I wasn't trying to farm by clicking on all the bodies, or I really wasn't event farming either to turn into gambling vendor. I was just playing stuff what we're dropping the more I continue to play, and I think that's fine for a level 20 character. We really don't expect legendaries to start raining from the sky until we get higher levels and higher tiers. So with that in mind, I really I guess I don't agree with most of the complaints, or I don't think they're really going to matter that much come launch. As we keep leveling up, things will naturally begin dropping more frequently. Now for the minions nerf, it was pretty bad at first, specifically necromancer skeletons. They were just getting obliterated. You know, last beta, Blizzard did feel like things were overtuned, and they were. My skeletons, when I was playing necromancer, they would barely die, except for maybe on the world boss fights or certain boss fights. I'd occasionally have to resummon a few here and there, but for the most part, they felt kind of invincible, really. Well, they significantly reduced the durability of the summons, the necroskeletons in particular, to the point where they like spent more time dead than actually attacking things and being useful. So this lasted for about a day, but Blizzard directly addressed it, just even issuing a hotfix to buff them back up a bit, making them a wee bit stronger, which is ideally a great example of what we can expect in the future if things seem so totally out of whack. Knowing that Blizzard might just throw out a hotfix after a day or two of something obviously being way undertuned, that's great to see. Love to see it. And then the third large complaint that I've been seeing a lot is the difficulty of Ashava. You know, the fact that this test capped us at level 20 meant the fight was significantly more difficult than it was last time around. And you couple our lower level and fewer skill points with that reduction in legendary drop rate, everyone across the board just was a ton weaker. And this also made it so that lower level people showing up during a boss fight in your instance would become very frustrating. And these things combined seems to have fueled a lot of the complaints that I've been seeing pop up online about the difficulty of Ashava, about just the mere presence of people who weren't at that level 20 cap. There were a lot of threads and a lot of posts being like, they're griefing. It's like, or they're just like trying to do the world boss and they haven't hit the cap yet because not everyone plays the same way at the same pace and tries to level quickly. Like, the world boss is there. If they can walk into the world boss zone, fair game. That's on Blizzard's design, if nothing else. But also, absolutely none of this stuff is going to matter come release in terms of the difficulty of a Shava when we're all capped at level 20, because you spend another 30 to 60 minutes and then you're 25, you're level 30, and like a Shava isn't all of a sudden outside of your level range and that much more difficult. This is a very, very particular issue to this particular server slam test at release. It really isn't going to matter much at all, and I don't think we should be fretting too much about it. I do think, though, there probably is some legitimate concern about how this sort of phasing and random grouping with people is going to come into play as we start to get towards that higher end content, because it will be a similar issue just at a different scale when it comes to like the big end game world bosses and stuff like that. I think we'll see similar complaints about, hey man, I'm level 70, what's this level 30 doing at the world boss? Like, we are going to see similar complaints, but maybe at that point it's not going to be as much of an issue. I think if anything, what I would actually like to see Blizzard do is give players the option restricting other people showing up, because there is a world boss scaling where the more people that are in an instance, if there's 5 people or if there's 10 people, the more people, the boss scales up with that. So if you're in a group of 2 people and you just want to try to 2-man the boss or solo the boss, I think there should be an option for that kind of thing. But then that goes back to this being a open shared world game and Blizzard wanting you to come across and see other players. That's in the very fabric of the design and how the game is structured. So maybe that thing that I'm bringing up as a potential solution to this issue is just never going to happen. I actually think that's probably really what is the case. So those are some of the concerns and criticisms that popped over this weekend, but I do want to touch on a few of the positives because I actually think there's quite a few. So Blizzard did add a rather substantial patch for this past weekend's playtest, which brought significant changes. So without going into the exact specific numbers and details, I'll just say there were nerfs to the classes and the abilities that they felt were overtuned, and buffs to things that were underperforming. Every single class saw changes to their various skills, talents, and passives for both better and worse, but largely speaking, what this amounted to is overall buffs for the Druid and Barbarian, and overall nerfs for the Sorcerer, Rogue, and Necro. Even with the nerfs considered, I still think those 3 classes are still very, very strong, and I do think the buffs did help the Druid and Barbarian, although it does still seem, at least general consensus right now, is that Druid is lagging behind. Again, remember, this is the balance in a level 20 beta, which ultimately doesn't matter because people are going to stay level 20 for like 15 minutes come full release. So the end game, when we have access to the Paragon boards and all of our skill points, then we start getting the higher tier gear and we're starting to synergize our builds with all of these different legendary aspects. That is where the class balance is really going to matter the most. Now that said, they should still be roughly in line while leveling up so that one class doesn't feel significantly worse than the other 4. Still looking at you, Druid, unfortunately. And I hope things get better because Druid, I love the class fantasy of Druid. It is like one of my favorite fantasy class archetypes, and I want to see Druid get better because I'd like to play Druid. I probably will play Druid anyways, regardless of where they fall on the power scale. But in general, I do want to say, sort of like with the hotfix that they did for the minions, Necromancer skeletons, I'm just happy to see them making such big changes in between these betas in an attempt to get classes more in line. While it may not be perfect, it is good to see them making tweaks with some of those bigger imbalances. Another positive from this weekend's test was the new dungeon structure. I think the new layouts and new content additions feel great. It seemed to me, at least, there was far less backtracking than there was in the prior beta with how they are now laying out dungeons. And I just really enjoyed going through dungeons in general, like checking out all of the corners, trying to see their events. Because if you didn't catch it, after the last beta, they came out during a stream and they talked about how they were going to overhaul the layout of dungeons, but also the events inside of those dungeons. The whole goal of all of this was to reduce the backtracking, to make it so that coming across the main objectives of a dungeon were much more natural, and you do that in the main path as you naturally move throughout, and also to make it so that any side paths and spokes that do exist will be worth visiting, and they will include events that, you know, are gonna at the very least give you some loot and give you a chance of yellows and of course the legendaries and above. And with this, they also added more new events to the dungeons, increasing the overall variety of the things that you'll come across. And with all of of that implemented this weekend, I felt like there was way less downtime in dungeons. I really enjoyed going through and exploring. And yes, when I came across a side path, a lot of times it did feel worth it because there was a chest, there was an elite pack, or there was some event, all of which results in a chance to get some new loot and upgrades or fodder for the smithing mill, basically. Another check in the positives box was performance this weekend. I would say everything went pretty smoothly on the performance and networking end. I had zero troubles logging in at any point during the test. There was never a disconnect at all, nor any hard crashes, and the game ran smoothly with very few sync or rollback issues. Biggest hiccups, I would say, came into effect whenever I went back to the main town. That's when I dealt with the most like stuttering or frame drops, but outside of that, everything was pretty darn smooth. Now, what's tough to say is I don't really know if we can chalk this up entirely to them improving things, or if it's just down to the fact that there was way lower interest in this beta than the prior beta, because as I mentioned earlier, it does seem like way fewer people participated in the server slam, as did the March open beta. I suspect they had a fraction of the number of testers, honestly. So that could very well account for much of like the server related improvements, the lack of queue times, the lack of disconnects, the lack of rubber banding. Maybe it's because there weren't a lot of people playing. That's certainly a possibility. A whole lot of reasons for that, because people played through a lot of this stuff, people who don't necessarily care to just unlock that cosmetic, people who don't want to burn out prior to launch. Also, Zelda just came out. That's probably prying a lot of people away. There's a whole host of reasons, but suffice it to say, almost guaranteed way fewer people were here this weekend. So maybe that's why the network side of things was a lot smoother. And that said, at least in terms of the non-server related issues, no matter how many number of people are playing or not, the game seems to run really well on my PC, way better than the last test. I didn't have huge issues in the last test, but there was some stuttering here and there, and that seems to have mostly been alleviated with the exception of whenever I ported into the big town. And that's a relief, frankly, given how terrible PC performance has been for a lot of games just in the past couple of months. Like, what is going on? People cannot get these PC games to run smoothly. I know it is a difficult challenge. I understand lots of different system specifications, a lot of things to account for, but boy, oh boy, it's been pretty rough out here for PC gamers who are looking for a smooth frame rate. And then the final note of positives from playing this weekend is, hey, the game remains a heck of a lot of fun. While I would have liked to see at least a little bit more, or at the very least not had our progression cap lowered from the last test, regardless, Diablo 4 is still fun to play. I am still having a good time, even messing around in that same one zone, playing through Fractured Peaks, unlike this is my 8th or so character at this point, but between all the tests that I've done and everything. So yeah, I'm going through the same zone over and over and over and over again, but I am still having a good time, and ultimately, I am just really looking forward to getting the final version of the game, getting everything else, all of the other zones, but then also finally getting to try those endgame systems, getting to run Nightmare Dungeons, see the remaining world bosses, check out those Helltide events, the Fields of Hatred. As a PvP fan, I cannot wait. I suspect I'll spend a lot of time there. I just can't wait until we have the whole game available and in front of us, and that will be happening very soon, just a little over 2 weeks as of this recording. Okay, so that is the beta. Let's talk about some other news. There's a few things going on. First up is this Nvidia promotion where from now until June 13th, anyone who purchases a GeForce 40 series graphics card will receive a free standard edition copy of Diablo 4. This promotion includes any card purchased directly through Nvidia or through select retailers, including places like Best Buy. And the version of the game that it comes with is that standard edition, but also you will get those pre-order bonuses. That includes various cosmetics. Blizzard did release another video, one of their Diablo 4 gameplay guides. This one was focused on dungeons, shrines, and the Codex of Power. As usual, pretty basic and straightforward stuff, although the real interesting thing here is at one point in the video, they briefly showed a clip of the Throne of Hatred, which does appear to be a location in Hell. In fact, data mined leaks for the game does list the Throne of Hatred as an area in a quest in the Hell region, so I'm pretty sold at this point on the ongoing rumors that Hell is going to be the 6th location in the game that Blizzard still hasn't revealed. Lots in store evidently for us that we haven't seen yet, and that is pretty exciting stuff. Blizzard did also tweet out some new uniques recently, an image of 3 different unique items. There's the Barbarian Mace Overkill, which does it so that Death Blow creates a shockwave, dealing 16 to 30% of base damage to enemies, and then enemies who die by this effect also reset Deathblow's cooldown. Resetting cooldown's pretty sick ability. Waxing Gibbous is a druid axe where you gain stealth for 2 seconds when killing enemies with shred. Breaking stealth with an attack grants ambush, which guarantees critical strikes for 1 to 2.5 seconds. And then finally, Gloves of the Illuminator, a sorcerer glove, makes it so that fireball bounces as it travels, exploding each time it hits the ground, but the explosion is 65 to 75% less damage. Can I just say, all of these uniques sound pretty awesome and exactly the kind of thing that I want to see from something as like coveted as uniques are supposed to be. These are really interesting abilities that change up these abilities, or at least enhance them in a rather significant way. And I hope that remains the case for the rest of the uniques that are in the game at launch and that will be released with upcoming seasons. We got some clarification on a few different things that I just wanted to quickly touch on. First of all, you probably heard about the campaign skip feature, how we're going to have the option after clearing the campaign to skip it on any future characters. There were some exact details here, which were once you complete the campaign on any difficulty or mode, so whatever world tier difficulty and whether softcore or hardcore, wherever you complete it, you can then skip it at any other difficulty or mode on any future character going forward. No Paragon board previews. This what? So they did clarify that there's going to be no way to preview upcoming Paragon boards. You're only going to see the Paragon board that you're actively on. The only way to see adjacent Paragon boards is when you actually reach the end, the connecting point from one to the other. I am honestly completely perplexed because what this is going to end up meaning is that everyone is just going to have to use third-party sites in order to plan their Paragon builds. Why restrict viewing this stuff in-game? I don't quite understand. They want to leave the surprise, but when it comes to player power and it comes to making builds and progressing, you want to know what to expect. You want to know where you're going, and to not know what board is connected when you get to the end of a board, I just don't particularly see the point in doing this. Let us see what is upcoming ahead of time. That information is going to be out there anyways, so why restrict in-game and force us to go to a third-party site? Whenever a developer can keep us in the game and stop us from tabbing out to get the information that we're looking for, that a lot of people are certainly going to be looking for, that is ideal. Keep it in the game, keep us immersed, keep us on our single screen. I don't want to be flipping through my phone to check out builds. And I know you don't have to do any of this stuff, but when you're planning builds, you want to know what's coming, you want to know the path that you're moving down. And again, it's not like that information is going to be hidden. Soon as the game releases or soon as the final build is data mined, we are going to know every single Paragon board, every single node. We'll just have to map it all out outside of the game rather than inside of the game, which I think would be preferable. And then lastly for today, I just wanted to briefly mention and touch on the big update that we got from Blizzard last week prior to the server slam, and that was their stream and discussion about their plans for D4 as a live service. Here they detailed what they've got in mind for seasons, for the cash shop, for the battle pass. There's a lot to parse here, and I do plan to cover this in detail in an upcoming video, but just as a quick TLDR, for seasons, the first season is going to be starting sometime mid to late July, so that'll give us a little bit of time to play around with the game and try different builds and pick our favorite class before season 1. They are still planning to do 3 to 4 seasons in a year. Each season will have a distinct theme and cosmetics to match. They joked a lot about how, say that a season theme was zombies, well then you'd get some zombie themed cosmetics, but they promised the first season at least isn't going to be themed after zombies. Each season is going to come with a new quest line, which is a side story, not progressing the main story. Also, that quest line walks you through the new season mechanics. They'll be introducing fresh gameplay mechanics to open up new builds and also adding various quality of life updates with each season. And they did say they do plan to have aspirational challenges in each season, including things like really tough bosses and dungeons. They did mention as well that balancing will occur throughout each season in case any particular classes or specs are overtuned. They want to have the option to have a balance patch in the middle of the season. This runs a little contrary though to this idea of, you know, the respec system and them wanting to make your specs matter and you making sure that you're investing in your character as you progress, and they're trying to make this respecing expensive as you get further and further along. Boy, I would just hate this situation where I am really invested. I've progressed and spent all my skill points, and I've gotten really far in the Paragon board, and I've gotten this gear set that matches with all my different legendary aspects that I want for this build, and I'm doing all this stuff, and I've upgraded that gear. Everything's looking good. And then they release a balance patch that nerfs my build into the ground. And so I got to spend a bunch of gold to change the build that fulfills my class fantasy, which is what Blizzard is pushing all this, the reason behind it being they want you to invest in class fantasy. So the idea that they might nerf that in the middle of a season, oh boy, I hope if that is the case, if they do bring big nerfs to particular skills or builds or gear or whatever, that they allow a free respec after that patch. If nothing else, I think that would be a fair balancing of the two, them wanting us to be invested, but them wanting to, be open to a balance patches in the middle of the season. And one big thing that people seemed a little perturbed by is the fact that there apparently will be no leaderboards for the first and possibly the second season as well. I do understand the people who like leaderboards want to see this. I also imagine this has to be like meaningful to less than 5, maybe less than 1% of the player base. If nothing else, maybe more people get use out of it when it comes to getting to see what builds and gear some of the top players are using for clear times or whatever. But for most people, they ain't gonna be nowhere near the top, so it really isn't that big of a deal, although having that sort of carrot on a stick and pushing people in that motivation of competition is helpful, and they will eventually get leaderboards, but apparently it's not ready quite yet. I'm not particularly fussed about it. I don't need my leaderboards to enjoy my season, but the sooner they get it in, the better for the people who do really enjoy it. For the Battle Pass stuff, they just did a basic overview. They said you progress the Battle Pass by earning favor, that while you're playing, while you're leveling up, and then also while you're completing things in the season journey. There's going to be the 3 tiers to the Battle Pass, the basic free version, which includes 27 tiers of free cosmetics, but then also Smoldering Ash, which are used for seizing blessings. This is the power, but the power is only included in the free track. Premium track, which costs $10, has those 27 free tiers plus 63 additional tiers. It includes a ton of different cosmetics, premium currency, mounts, and then cosmetic mount armor. And then the 3rd tier Battle Pass Accelerated costs $25. It has everything in premium, as well as a 20 Battle Pass tier skip and an additional special cosmetic. Now, there has been some debate around that Accelerated Battle Pass potentially being a bit of pay for advantage. Mainly the situation is if leveling up the Battle Pass takes longer than reaching the level requirements for the Smoldering Ash, which in turn can be used to unlock experience boost, that is going to let people who buy that Accelerated Pass get that experience boost faster, potentially. We don't know. We just have no idea if that is the case, if leveling will outpace Battle Pass progression, or how much that really matters even, which long term, I suspect it doesn't, especially prior to the leaderboards. Who really cares who gets to level 100 first? I know I don't. And we are probably also talking about an advantage of maybe a couple of hours at most. I should note, and I should add, Blizzard has said that if it is the case that there is an issue here, you have that potential pay for advantage where people are character level reaching that point in the Battle Pass faster than the Battle Pass progression. So the people who did buy Accelerated are getting an advantage. They said that they would tune that if that ends up being the case. We simply don't know for sure at the moment, though, one way or another. There was more in this stream as well, and I do want to not only dive into more detail and discuss this stuff on a little more granular level. I just want to cover it more thoroughly in an upcoming vid, but I did want to give you the basic recap at the moment. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it. That's a lot of the major recent updates about the game. That's my experience with the Server Slam. All around, I had a really good time. It was fun playing. I will say there was definitely a little, things were tuned down a bit in terms of the excitement level, and I really try to moderate myself to make sure if I'm not enjoying a gameplay experience, is it the game itself? Is it just where I'm at mentally? If I'm having a good day or a bad day? Did I not get enough sleep last night? Am I not caffeinated enough? I try to really make sure that I separate my own general feelings in general to the gameplay experience. And I'll just say, that said, it just felt a little less hype this weekend. And I think a lot of it is, there's a lot of factors, right? I think the fact that we've played this a lot of times, I've played this a lot of times personally, preview event last year, the early access beta, the open beta, and now this time around, that is a lot of fractured peaks, you know what I mean? But then also the fact that they tuned things back this time around where, last beta we could get up to 25, this beta we could only get to level 20. And while I realized this was a server test, it was a stress test in a lot of ways. It wasn't so much focused on new content. They weren't looking to add new content. They reined the content back, if anything. But I think that reining back did also kill the motivation a little bit. And then you couple that with the fact that it only lasted a couple days, and everything's deleted now. While I'm recording this, all that stuff that we did was deleted, and we're only 2.5 weeks from launch. So I think a lot of that, my point is, I don't think it was the gameplay experience that was less hype. I think it was all of those factors coming together made me just less motivated and less interested in really sinking a bunch of time. It's why I only played 10 hours, whereas all the prior betas I played many more than 10 hours. There was just a lot of factors, and I think a lot of that also plays into the fact that almost certainly, like I said, there were way fewer people playing, and those who did play probably played on average way less than they did last beta. I'll be curious to see if Blizzard releases any stats, and if we get that comparable, how many people unlocked the Wolf Backpack and how many people unlocked the Mount Horn. I would assume that Mount Horn number will be significantly smaller than the Wolfpack number. That would at least be my estimated guess, based on my anecdotal experience, what I saw online, what I saw with numbers, and just on my friends list, a fraction of the people were playing, and most of them played way less often. I'd be curious what your experience is as well, and what your general thought is. Again, not that it's a big deal because of all of those factors. It makes sense that there are way fewer people playing way less often at this particular test. But regardless, D4 looks great. I'm really excited. We're 2.5 weeks away from launch. I'm going to be talking about the game quite a bit more as we lead up to release, just because I'm really looking forward to it. I'll mix up some other coverage of some other games. I want to talk about Chrono Odyssey actually really soon. That looks pretty cool. If not, probably pay to win. Hopefully not NFTs. They've said no NFTs. Okay, that's it for me today. I'm rambling. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the vid. I'll see you next time. Take it easy.